Sqilah. Enhancing Careers. Chapter 7. Aircraft Coding and Registration. In civil aviation, airlines use multiple types of aircrafts which can be classified by many parameters such as capacity, type of engine, size, range, and many other factors. The manufacturers provide a particular name and code to the type of aircraft manufactured by them. Even within the same type of aircraft, there are variations in length of fuselage, type of engine, etc., and they are called as variants. E.g., Boeing 737 many have many variants which are denoted by B737-100, B737-800, B737-400, etc., which may be codified as 731,738,734, etc., for correct understanding of ATC, pilots, and many professionals involved in the operations. It is therefore important to provide correct codes to identify these aircraft distinctly so that the professionals at work can interpret it correctly. These codes are defined by both the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and the International Air Transport Association, IATA. ICAO codes are published in ICAO Document 8643 Aircraft Type Designators and are used by air traffic control and airline operations such as flight planning. While ICAO designators are used to distinguish between aircraft types and variants that have different performance characteristics affecting ATC, the codes do not differentiate between service characteristics. Passenger and freight variants of the same type/series will have the same ICAO code. IATA codes are published in IATA's Annual Standard Schedules Information Manual, SSIM, and are used for airline timetables and computer reservation systems. IATA designators are used to distinguish between aircraft types and variants that have differences from an airline commercial perspective, size, role, interior configuration, etc. As well as an aircraft type code, IATA may optionally define an aircraft group code for types and variants that share common characteristics. The following is a partial list of ICAO type designators for a range of multi-engine and turbine aircraft, with corresponding IATA type codes where available. Aircraft registration codes. An aircraft registration is a unique alphanumeric string that identifies an aircraft, in similar fashion to a license plate on an automobile. In accordance with the Convention on International Civil Aviation, all aircraft must be registered with a national authority, such as the FAA or Transport Canada, and furthermore, they must carry proof of this registration in the form of a legal document called a certificate of registration at all times when in operation. Most countries also require the aircraft registration to be imprinted on a permanent fireproof plate mounted on the fuselage for the purposes of post-fire/post-crash aircraft accident investigation. Because airplanes typically display their registration numbers on the aft fuselage just forward of the tail, in earlier times more often on the tail itself, the registration is often referred to as the tail number. The registration number is used to identify civilian aircraft and is comparable to a military tail code or even an automobile license plate number. All types of civilian aircraft are required to have a registration number including commercial airliners, business jets, personal aircraft, helicopters, former military planes in private ownership, gliders, ultralights, seaplanes, airships, blimps, and balloons. Even the new breed of privately owned spacecraft like Spaceship One is required to have a registration number. Although each aircraft registration is unique, some, but not all countries allow it to be reused when the aircraft has been sold, destroyed, or retired. The rules governing aircraft registration are decided upon by a multinational body called the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. This group dictates the first portion of a registration code that is known as the prefix or international prefix. This prefix is typically 2 or 3 characters in length, but can be as few as 1 or as many as 4. The prefix is specific to a particular nation or region and is usually followed by a dash and then a suffix made up of 1 to 5 characters. The structure of the suffix is typically determined by that country's aviation regulatory agency, such as the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, in the United States. Most nations have relatively simple rules for determining the suffix. This portion of the registration is most often made up of 3 or 4 letters. Some countries instead prefer 4 or 5 numbers, while a few use a mixture of letters and numbers. In the United States, the registration number is also referred to as an N number, as it starts with the letter N. The advantage of the international prefix codes is that the registration number immediately identifies the nation of origin. Though many of the codes do not appear logical, the ICAO does make an attempt to base the prefix on the name of the country in its native language. Some of the most obvious examples include OE for Austria, Österreich, F for France, D for Germany, Deutschland, I for Italy, JA for Japan, and G for the United Kingdom, Great Britain. It is not entirely clear why N was originally chosen for the United States when U and US were available and would seem more logical choices. A for America might also be a good choice but was used for Austria for some period of time. The prevailing theory as to why N was chosen dates back to the days of Morse code, when an international conference agreed to identify various nations by a one-letter designation to avoid confusion. Since the U.S. Navy had already been using N to identify its stations, it is believed that this letter was chosen to represent the entire United States. Many of these wireless communication codes were later adopted for aviation as well, so the N was carried over and has been retained to the present day. Even the logic behind few codes such as VT for India is rather interesting. One may notice that numerous countries and regions have codes starting with V, and many of these are now, or once were British colonies. When the prefix code system was implemented by the ICAO, British possessions were given codes starting with V to indicate their status as part of the British Empire. The letter V was chosen to represent Viceroy, the title given to a colonial governor. Even after these nations gained their independence, many have retained the V prefix codes to the present day. Aside from India, the most recognizable example is probably Australia's VH. Exceptions include Pakistan, which gained the new prefix AP after splitting from India in 1947, and Hong Kong, which traded in its former VR for B upon its return to China. It is also noteworthy that a movement has been underway in India to request a prefix code change from the ICAO to something better representing the independent nation. In addition to the international prefix codes in use today, many others have been discontinued. One example shown below is the CCCP, or SSSR in the Latin alphabet, once used by the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. A few other prefixes no longer in use are FC for the Free France movement during World War II, DDR for East Germany, RV for Persia, now Iran, J for Japan, for YB for the Arabic Federation, Iraq and Jordan, M and X for Mexico, HMAY for Mongolia, CH for Switzerland, and YE for Yemen prior to its breakup in 1990. Parts of aircrafts. All aircrafts are not all alike, but they are comprised of few basic components that are same in all. The main sections of an airplane include the fuselage, wings, cockpit, engine, propeller, tail assembly, and landing gear. Fuselage. The fuselage is the main section, or body, of the airplane. If fuselage sounds like a French word to you, you're right. That's because it is derived from the French word for spindle-shaped, fusel. This is where you'll find passengers, cargo, and the flight crew. The fuselage is the foundation for the structure of the aircraft. The tail number, which identifies each plane, is often located at the rear of the fuselage near the tail. Wings. The wings of an aircraft serve the same purpose as the wings of a bird, hence their name. Airplanes are considered fixed-wing aircraft. A plane is capable of flight because its wings provide lift. Lift is created by the shape of the wings and the plane's speed as it moves forward. The cockpit. The cockpit of an airplane is also called the flight deck. This is where the pilot controls the aircraft. The cockpit includes a seating area for the flight crew, flight instruments, avionics, audio/radio communications, and flight controls. Engine. An aircraft engine is the power source for a plane. Most are either piston engines or gas turbines. There are many manufacturers and models of engines. Each type of engine is given a code by the manufacturer. Tail. The empennage, also called the tail or tail assembly, is located at the rear of an airplane. The tail provides stability during flight. This is very similar to how feathers on an arrow provide stability. Landing gear. The landing gear is the undercarriage of an airplane. It is used for both takeoff and landing. The landing gear supports the plane when it is on the ground. Landing gear allows the plane to take off, land, and taxi without damage.